Hello and good morning. So in this video, I'm going to be covering all the different dimensions of sex and sexuality that I see is relevant for covering, especially in the context for men, to explain the system of sexuality as men starting since puberty, because this is a topic that hasn't been discussed in society amongst people, between parent and child, and between brothers and sisters and friends. Now, the very point here that seems to not be known or spoken is this shift that happens in a man's mind programming, where with the energy of the mind and the thoughts of the mind, it is literally training men to be, let's say, a pervert, to be someone who would jump onto women and sexually assault them. Because the very nature of the what they call wet dreams for men that start at the age right around puberty, let's say 13, is that very nature and develops into that nature. However, obviously, because all men go through this, great leaders, let's say, like Obama or Donald Trump or whoever, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, they're all men. It's just that it's either suppressed or hidden in some way, or I suppose maybe worked with by a very few to really change it. However, you could see in the vast majority of men and populations that the sexuality, especially when they're in vulnerable situations like in poverty or in drug abuse, that this sexuality can be very obviously distorted, or not distorted, but shown and exposed into reality and lived. Because starting at the age of 13, in my experience, the dreams were of such a nature where I was like, there was like a woman's butt, and I would just fall into that butt, and then I would just ejaculate with that experience, where it is give you a positive experience in that moment, where you have this, imagine like this giant butt, and you just like land right into it. Or other very odd and strange experiences, which again, the mind creates and gives you. It created it and gave it to me as something to experience. I wasn't an active creator. No man was. No man created their dreams. Initially, even then, what little creation they had was still based within energy, reaction, building off what was already there. The very nature of the dreams were presented to us as men, as guys, that this is the experience you're going to be having. And the very nature of this biological response is to make sure that you go through this and you are, let's say, converted into this, to want this, to have this, to need this, to enjoy this, no matter what, no matter who you are. And so I can even imagine that for a gay man, that for them, they obviously have their own wet dreams about men. And that's also something that they do not control. That it is just here, and obviously so, and it cannot even be denied. Yet obviously, that point of discussion never arises or is considered, because the general point of wet dreams that men experience is not discussed even. Yet look at the common sense, that if you're a man having wet dreams about, let's say, penises. Obviously, that's a point showing that you are gay. Obviously so. I never had that experience. But very obviously, that would be a very clear indication that you're gay. And that is fine. It is okay to be gay. It is something that is, let's say, already programmed here. It is already you. I won't pretend I know fully how it works. But when you live that and it's here, the same thing for a man who's straight, who dreams, let's say, or is given this dream by their mind, these experiences that for me happened at least once every 2 weeks since I was 13 or so, which I did not even masturbate until I was 18. So every 2 weeks for those 4 or 5 years, I ejaculated like that in some way. And that is the very nature of the mind, of what men have to go to in particular, because for women it is different. I do not know exactly the nature of what women go through. I haven't spoken to them about that, or haven't received any information about that. But it is very clear that women don't go through that exact same cycle, that exact same programming, and that men go through, where every 2 weeks you at least have that experience, that attempt to program you constantly, that cycle that you cannot choose to break unless you actually have the tools and understanding of how the mind works, of how it's based on energy, which when I had those tools and would apply them since I was 18 or 19 when I started Desteni process, there were points, there were moments where I didn't even have a wet dream, where I would just ejaculate. And I'd wake up and find that. And so yes, you can change the programming of your mind. You can change it. But it's not understood or spoken about. If young boys, men, they're 13, 12, were given these tools of self-forgiveness, even starting much earlier, like when they were 7, when they were able to understand fully what they were doing with self-forgiveness. And literally in the moments, understanding that your mind is trying to program you to become something, to respond in this way towards these images, towards women, that you can choose to stop it. And even then, that point can be very controversial for people, men and women, to understand why they would stop that. But understand the very nature of the dreams. I only mention this one point of me falling into a woman's butt, but it grow into exactly what maybe you would fear, where I would even, like, in the dreams as it progressed, like I would realize, oh, I'm dreaming, and I have that point of sexual desire to find a woman in a dream and then just have sex with her, where it would even be like jumping on top of her, grabbing her, kind of like running after her. And even sometimes that excitement alone would be the ejaculation point, where as soon as I grabbed her, that was it. But that was the very nature of thoughts, like literally jumping on top of a woman in the dream and like pulling off her chest, her clothing on her chest, and then just exposing her breasts. And that was it. That was the point. Where, yes, at that point, I don't have sex. I cannot imagine what the woman's body was like, or all these different points. But simply this kind of nature of the dream of, I do not understand what sex is or what sexuality is. All I'm understanding is I'm having these positive experiences, and I want to grab these women, go after these women, and experience these things. And so that was the very nature of the programming constantly, the very experience, the very energy, which I did not understand. And that is what all men go through. But it is something that is embarrassing to talk about. It is something scary to talk about. Yeah, imagine if we all talked about it. How men how people can actually face this kind of programming and actually stop it and end it. And again, let's say it's controversial because it's very generally accepted, and the porn point is obviously an outflow of this programming from the mind of men to do the sexual point, to live the sexual point. Because the very nature of porn is to serve particularly men and to have that experience in that very mental, visual way, which is what your wet dreams were and are, and then what develop into your thoughts about women and sexuality and sex. And then we live sex as men through the mind, through images, through, let's say, these dreams, these fantasies. So even question this point is obviously very difficult for society, for people, because we're existing within the mind. Yet the one point that is unknown to men, because to even live this point, to actually live a real sexual orgasm for a man, is completely unknown, because it is not shown or revealed in any way in any wet dream. And obviously by the point men have sex for the first time, they are already within the images and memories of wet dreams, of relating to women through the images instead of through physical reality. So men completely are unknown, completely are ignorant to what a real orgasm is like. Which for me, when I've had sex, throughout my relationships, whereas I had all the sex that I needed or could have wanted, I had those experiences, not once did I have a real orgasm, a real sexual orgasm, even though I ejaculated plenty of times. That is not the same thing as having a real orgasm. The same issue that women face as well. Yet, for men, it's more hidden because it's believed that the ejaculation is an orgasm. It is not. For me, I place it literally on a scale of 1 to 100. That ejaculation at most, let's say, is a 5 or a 10 at the very best, which will only happen once for me, compared to a real physical orgasm, which is at 100, because it is literally like in the movies where you're twisting and turning and it's your full body with how it's shown how women have an orgasm, which obviously they're faking and acting in a movie. But that full-on orgasm as your body, that is what's possible for men. And that is the only word that orgasm, that's the only thing that the word orgasm should refer to. So that is what's real and physical, and you've experienced with your entire body, not as a mental picture in your mind with just your penis ejaculating, going back and forth, and just finishing like that in less than 2 seconds. An orgasm lasts for minutes. That's the potential, which can only be seen or known if you actually live it and show it to yourself, which I was only able to do, which I've done many, many times already, which I've only been able to do through walking a process, through destiny, through literally stopping the energies, literally forgiving thoughts about reacting to the images of women's butts and breasts and any sexual movement of a woman's form or image, like their let's say, expression in terms of being seductive towards men, towards being, let's say, the instigating point for for my own sexual, let's say, drive. When putting that point, removing all that energy, removing all that triggers, and putting the point into my physical body, experiencing my physical reality through my physical body, purely physical, let's say, stimulus, physical interaction, physical awareness of my entire body, feeling it, feeling my own hands across my body, not just focusing on, let's say, the penis, but my entire body, how my arms feel, how my legs feel, an entire physical experience with breath. That is the real starting point for, let's say, an orgasm. And I noticed with women, when I was with women in sex, that was the very same or similar point for them, where it has to be involved their entire physical body to feel their body. That for them, it wasn't just as simple as just touching the genitalia for women, the clitoris, where you really have to feel your entire body, be into your entire body. Which for me was support within looking at that point for how women, it is more challenging for them to orgasm, but that same exact path I see was the same path that I needed to walk for my body. Because that is how it's done, through your entire physical body, through breath, through being here with all of your cells, with experiencing the entire moment. And then that is how you have a real orgasm. So for men, that is their challenge, for all men, their challenge of how to actually have a real orgasm. Because what happens is that ejaculation, which is only like a 1 or a 5, you know it's not enough. And so you're never satisfied. So that is how addiction is developed, because it is through energy. So the entire life of a man, of how mind is given to them, of how they are supposed to be according to the mind, according to the programming, is a complete deception. Is completely a point of challenge, where literally everything that is presented to you by the mind, and of course then by society, because society is a reflection of the mind, is a lie. Is not the actual truth. Is not the actual point to understand. Is something that must be forgiven, let it go, and not even trusted. Like you have to question it if you actually want to get to the truth. And part of this truth is what I'm showing to you here, because I walked the process. So I'm sharing this here so your process is quicker and faster and more effective, so it can actually change eventually for all men, because then we actually understand what we're working with, the very nature of energy. Because the reward is a much better life, much better sex, much better experience, where you are not addicted. Where for me, after having these real physical orgasms, I'm not sleepy or tired. It's not a drain on my body. I'm actually more awake, if you can believe that, because obviously what I went through in having sex and ejaculating is to feel more tired, is to feel sleepy. That is the very nature. That's another point of proof, another cross-reference for yourself. If you're tired after sex, in terms of that sleepiness that ejaculation gives you, then that was the point of the mind. Obviously, if you're physically awake and active in the sexual moment, your entire body is really into it, really active. Your muscles are going. You're awake and you're here. That is something that's different. That is not simply, let's say, release. That is a becoming here, breathing here, physically here. I started Desteni in 2009. I've had my relationships in 2008, 2009, and since then I've been working on this point, somewhat very spontaneously, somewhat very naturally, because I wasn't as deep into masturbation addiction when I was 13 to 18. So in that sense, you could say I was lucky, but you also can say it's very specific. And here I'm able to open doors for other people, other men. Because no matter who you are, no matter how deep in an addiction you are into masturbation or porn, this is the physical body. This is the potential for every single person, because it is through the physical body, that you live this. And the same process, I would say, applies to women. Obviously, I'm not a woman. I haven't lived that, so I can't say that from that perspective. But the women's and men's body were identical when they were born, when they were developing the womb. There are only some changes that developed. So it's not that different, especially since our minds is still based within energy, still based within thought. And our physical body is still physical bodies with blood, with senses of cells. So it is pretty much the same process. So for you, you have to live this for yourself and prove, whether you're a man or a woman, what is possible and that you can overcome your own pre-programming of what you're supposed to be and what sex was supposed to be. And then you can raise your children in the starting point, so they don't have to go through the same consequences that you have, the same limitations of energy that you went through. Because no matter who you are, no matter what, every single parent of every single child will go through this, whether you're a man or a woman. With women, obviously, if you're ignorant about how men work, that is a problem as well. Because how else can you support your man, your partner in the future? Or even if you're gay or not, you can understand the point. How can you support people in your life, men in your life, or women in your life, if you do not understand what they are going through and the very nature of the mind, the very nature of your own mind? So it's important to talk about this for the well-being of humanity, of all of us, and to support in however way we can. So this is Yogan signing off. Thank you.